Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Untitled Chapter. I'm the CEO of T54 Project, a not-for-profit based organization that raises awareness about the impact of climate change in over 100 nations. I am so excited to be here, and I'm so grateful to my good friend Farai Mumbawa from South Africa for giving me this opportunity to address every one of you. My topic today is centered around climate change and the impact it has in the African context or in the African continent, and the impact it has on me and you. So these impacts are quite wide. It has socio-economic impact. It has, in some points, spiritual impact on you. And in some climes, climate change even defines what nationhood will be. By that, I mean some countries will no longer be bearing their names because landmass have been overtaken by water, and the entire territorial boundaries have been eroded off. So these are the impacts that climate change creates on us. So once again, I want to thank the management of African Matters for creating a platform that is being used to voice the concerns and the challenges of young ones like you and me. And it's really time that young Africans, that's the truth, that every single one of us in Africa, by young, I don't necessarily mean age. If you have vitality in your hands, if you have vitality in your heart, if you genuinely, sincerely have ideas that can push for better development of people, that to me is what it means to be young at heart. That to me is what it means to be youth. The concept of youth for me and my organization has to do with intergenerational symbiotic relationship that ensures that we drive the sustainable development goal and make the world a better place. So the question before us, or the question that will better explain to lay people that do not understand the concept of climate change, or to people that understand the concept but are confused because of the muddy waters, or because of the sentiments that have political undertone, that have spiritual undertone, that has no undertone. So climate change is a term. It's also called global warming, and more recently it's called climate crisis. So climate change is a term that tries to describe how the Earth's ecosystem are changing in weather patterns that have lasted for decades and maybe millions of years. So when you have weather patterns that are lasting so long, different from what we used to know over a period of time, that's the layman definition. There are other things involved that we need to iron out. Okay, so what is the difference between weather and what's the difference between the climate? Now, the weather is a local happening atmospheric event that is happening in a short period of time. Weather is local, is happening over a short period of time. At that point, that's weather. So if you look out your window, I'm in New Jersey now, out in the window, we're in the summer. So I expect to see the sun. Now that's the weather. It's happening locally and it's happening on the spot. But over the last 30 years, you understand, there has been more heat and more warming. Even during the winter time, more warming has taken place. Now that's what we call the climate. So climate is more of the atmospheric average of temperature over a stretch of period of time. So the period of time in question is years to decades to millions of years. Unlike weather that happens within minutes, within hours, within few days. So that's the difference. And sometimes people get these things muddled up. So for us in T54 Project, the climate change is caused by humans. Humans have caused us to get to where we are today, where it's becoming hard to even determine what the temperature or what the weather will look like. When yesterday it can be raining, and today it can be sunny, and then tomorrow there won't be rain for many weeks. These bizarre and extremes of weather patterns have now been told to us by government agencies, not only in your country, but at the United Nations level. That's the international panel that is addressing climate change. The IPCC report have now come to the conclusion that humans are the cause. Humans are the cause of the environmental changes that we've seen. Now the question you ask is, so what has made the weather change, or why have we, or how have we caused the problem? So we've caused the problem in the following areas. One, the way we practice our agriculture, bush burning, cutting down of trees. Somebody will say, oh my goodness, that's what almost every African farmer does, or that's almost like the normal practice. Yes, it's the normal practice many decades ago, many years ago in the African climate, but that accumulated action by farmers all across the continent has made the environment poor. Not only in Africa, also in Europe, also in Asia, also in the Pacific Island nations. All the cumulative actions of destroying trees, either to build your shopping malls, destroying trees either to build your express highways, destroying trees without replacing them, have led to an increase in the amount of what we call carbon dioxide. Again, carbon dioxide is a scientific gas or a molecule that is seen in the air, but for the layman we call it pollutants, because there are other substrates, there are other types or other forms and combination of this complex molecule that move up. Once we destroy the trees, they all move up into the atmosphere. Lest I forget that the earth in which we are in comprises of different layers. So we have the atmosphere, we have the biosphere. The biosphere means the one that has to do where human beings, the space in which human beings live in. We have the lithosphere, that's the ground. We have the atmosphere, that's the one above us, the sky, everything that it has in it. We have the hydrosphere, the water components too. You know, either it comes in form of rain, either it comes in form of the ocean you see, the stream, the river. Those are also part of, you know, the elements that make up the earth. Then we have the cryosphere, that's the ice, the glaciers and all those stuff. Now all these layers of components form what we call the earth. So the atmosphere is important, the cryosphere is important, that's the ice region, the North Pole or the South Pole, depending, Arctic, North, Antarctical, South, or Arctic, ice over water, Antarctical, ice over land. They're all the cryosphere, the cryosphere, or the cryospheric space. We have the hydrosphere, the rain, the ocean, the water, the stream, the lake. Those all make up the hydrosphere. We have the lithosphere, the ground itself, the core. Then we have the biosphere, the human or the living things and the creatures that live in. All these make up the earth. Now, when we destroy the trees, activities on land, what happens is that all the actions of the trees, because the trees do a lot of things other than provide food for us and existence for us. The tree also help in what we call sequestration of carbon dioxide. So that everybody knows what these big terms are, but they are very simple. Is carbon dioxide is being sucked up by plants, by trees, by shrubs, by anything that has a plant-like existence or plant-like nature. They suck it up. In the presence of sunlight, they are able to make food. So sequestration is the process of plants actively sucking up carbon dioxide. Now they keep this carbon dioxide we now call pollutants, or we call polluted gases, and other of its brothers like sulfides, hydrofluorocarbons, nitrous oxide, all those other highly volatile gas we now call the green gas or the greenhouse gases. You know, so it helps sucks up all those stuff, especially carbon dioxide, in the presence of sunlight to make food. So plants actually suck up this carbon dioxide that are now in the atmosphere at a very large amount enough to be disturbing us. It's creating health problem. It's warming the environment. We are unnecessarily hot. People are now coming down with kidney stones that have been associated with environmental conditions, dehydration, absence of water, and all those things. So the point is this, that when you cut down trees, you free up carbon dioxide that have been trapped. This trapped carbon dioxide moves to the atmosphere level to join other carbon dioxide released by other sources. There are other sources that humankind have also helped to release carbon dioxide. During our manufacturing, our companies and our factories, they emit carbon dioxide too. Now, when you cut the trees, carbon dioxide that have been trapped for many years are freed up in tons and billions of molecules are freed up into the atmosphere. They now join the contribution coming from our industrialization or our factories, our manufacturing factories that freely emits carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. It also joins the one coming from the traffic, our transport sector, the ones from your fuel-driven engines that release from the exhaust pipe carbon monoxide, a substrate of carbon dioxide. Again, it joins in the atmosphere. Then we have the ones from agriculture. Yes, agriculture. The fat of your the fats coming from the anus from your cow, their fecal matter, which releases methane. All these are components or constituents of carbon, because methane has carbon and hydrogen, an atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen come together, you understand, a covalent bond to form methane. So methane is a substrate of carbon, right? So this methane in itself is a substrate of carbon, are also part of the things that make the environment very polluted. So the point is this, that we in our action, either through industrialization, have increased carbon dioxide emission into the atmosphere level that is helping to warm the earth. Either through the deforestation or through our bid to cut down trees indiscriminately, we have added again to emissions, either due to the melting of the glacier, the cryosphere, the ice in both the Arctic and Antarctic region happening at a faster rate than even the ones on land. All those two are freeing off carbon dioxide that have been trapped in the ice for many centuries, many millions of centuries. Those carbon dioxide, including bacteria, including viruses, have all started, being released to the atmosphere, either carried by birds that migrate from time to time due to absorb seedings, and when they return back with all manners of disease. Then we have the ones from transportation, all the emissions from all our motorbikes driven by fuel, our combustion engines, and all our generators and all those things. Those things for that increase carbon dioxide. So these carbon dioxide blankets or gas that are released in billions only move up to the space or to our atmosphere level. Now, when it gets to the atmosphere level, it creates like a blanket over anything below it. So usually before now, these gases, when they're in their appropriate or adequate amount, are released to the atmosphere and they go out to space, and then there's an exchange between sunlight and all those stuff. They change into other forms and they are there. But the point now is this carbon dioxide has so much that they're all creating extra molecules above us and have created a blanket on us, so that the sun that comes from outside, that comes straight to the earth, that should be returned back to dissipate energy, only stays within. So sun is no longer being reflected back into the space that we are in, into the galaxy, into the terrestrial realm. The sun just keeps staying in because carbon dioxide have formed a blanket and have trapped ab initio the sun sun rays that should be going back and creating a balance. So carbon dioxide emission have distorted that natural balance in the ecospace between sun ray energy that naturally comes down to earth for plants to absorb and mix with carbon dioxide to form food for us to eat. But now we have destroyed all the trees. We have cleared the Amazon. The Amazon is one of the richest natural reserve of trees, and they play a balanced role in creating a more better weather pattern distribution in the world. We are being told that every day the size of 500 football fields are being cleared for other things, and all these things have created a lot of challenges and problems, not only for us but for other climes. So the blanket that you see is the blanket of carbon dioxide and other elements, other gases that are substrate, that are byproducts of it or that are related with it. They now form these blankets in the atmosphere, preventing sunlight from coming in or sunlight from going out to dissipate the heat. And all the heat within is making Earth cook up. It is the cooking up effect that is called global warming. So global warming is the cooking up effect that is happening as a result of increased energy coming out from the cosmic space into Earth, and it's not seeing the relevant structures or mechanisms to absorb it, to convert it into other forms of energy, or to convert it into other forms that can help human existence. So this is what global warming is. So the causes is about us. It's about the ways we've been doing things pre-industrial period, the way we've been consuming things, the way we've been buying up things, the way we've been using up plastics. All this plastic end up being dumped somewhere, either in landfills and all those things. And companies need to produce more plastics, right? Because we have high demand for it. And that's why there's need for us to tell every African that it's not in your interest that new plastics are produced, because by 2050, there will be more plastic produced than the number of aquatic life. So plastic will outnumber fish, whale, crabs, sea lion, seahorse, all aquatic life, tilapias, every kind of aquatic life. The number of plastics that have been produced, that will be produced, will outnumber it if we do not stop. And that's why over 40 countries now have banned single-use plastic, and many more are even going more radical to eliminate plastic. Now, climate change effect is an effect that unfortunately is creating humanitarian crisis. It's creating humanitarian crisis in Africa. And many Africans do not know that some of the conflicts that are happening and that are protracted, especially the conflict in Sudan, Nigeria, and some parts of Congo, are all tied to the environment. Take example, Sudan. How did climate change cause the problem in Sudan? In 2007, the Security Council at the United Nations, I did some training at the UN Institute of Training and Research, and we are privy to information identifying that climate change causing conflicts in Africa was recognized in the case of Darfur and Sudan. So what happened was that before 2007, Darfur has what we call customary rights on how lands are being used. The indigenous people in the Darfur area had more arable lands and had more vegetation. The balance between the use of water coming out from their streams and the river, with the animal needs. However, there are other parts of Sudan that practice different forms of farming. They are nomads. These nomads are known to carry their cattle and travel to regions where there are still relative vegetation to either feed on the grasses or drink water from the natural stream that are there. in 2007, there was this El Nino effect. El Nino effect is a natural sudden fluctuation of weather pattern, but what it is characterized that there was heavy warming, unprecedented warming that created an arid condition, a hot extreme condition that created drought. So because of that, some of the indigenous people in Darfur area started rationing and started preventing cattle and herdsmen from coming to take from the stream. They told them that there are times that cattle can feed on grasses, not when grasses are still being planted. There are times for the cattle to come and drink from the water, not when human beings are using them. Somehow the government of the day that has been displaced now took sides and did not understand what was going on. That for the last 7 years till 2007, that there has been this fluctuation in weather that has created increased temperature rise, again caused by increased carbon dioxide emissions, and cumulative effects that were going on around the world. So the president then made it law that these herdsmen can, at any time, with no recourse to any restriction, can go back and front and either graze or take water at any time. That caused a lot of transhuman migration, because the herdsmen now had to move from their original region that was now no longer habitable. It was now undergoing desertification. They were now moving to where farmers in the Darfur region were equally struggling, but not as bad. So that transhuman migration of people, livestock, in exodus amount with weapons supported by government only led the rebels in Darfur to begin fight. So that's how the Darfur crisis started out, as a fight. Don't get me wrong, there are other vices that have inflamed the Darfur war. Government injustice, government insensitive, visionlessness of the government to predict how things are, poor infrastructure, absence of justice, absence of strong institutions to hold government accountable and to hold others that ferment trouble accountable. All those things were there, but the triggering factor was because of resources, because of the scarce resources that had been made worse by the climate struggle. So our point is this, that climate change was first recognized in 2007 by the UN Security Council as creating conflict in the Sudan region, and this has escalated till now. Now, other things have led to what is happening in Sudan. Sudan ended up breaking up into two countries. So you have the original Sudan and we have the South Sudan. But either way, the continuous, prolonged, protracted drought and famine had only made the humanitarian crisis there unbelievable. Until date, none of all these two countries have ever recovered. Now, these are data that have been there for a long time. That this is where Africa needs to be very, very careful. Africa is often described as the continent most at risk with negative climate change. All our leaders since 2012, since when they've been attending meetings in the UN, have all been aware of these documents. Every one of them, whether the ones that are here, whether the ones that are new, governments of every African country have been aware that Africa, in moving forward, will be the continent with the worst risk of impact of climate change. Now, what has happened that either because we don't see it as an emergency, or our governments themselves do not understand the concept of climate change. Either way, there is a lack of capacity of Africans to be able to respond now to the severity of impact of climate change we're seeing. And the severity are like the worst. For instance, there's a cyclone. The cyclone is, I don't know how to explain it. It can be equated. It's an extreme weird pattern that has to do with water, wild wind, atmospheric pressure, all mixed together. Just imagine a hurricane, a wild wind that can bring in large amounts of water, that has the power of a wild wind, 7 times that amount or 100 times that amount, and is very destructive. Now, in March, 3 countries in Africa, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, all these three countries have been devastated by a cyclone that the category of the cyclone is just category 2. Category 2 in the US or in other parts of the world are not, it's bad, but it's not so bad because we've had category 4, 5 hurricanes. Now a category 2 hurricane devastated Malawi, Mozambique and Zimbabwe. Till today, those countries have never recovered. If 20 years ago, these same three countries are told that a time will come when your country will not function, your government cannot be able to run because of the environment, every single one of them will laugh. But this is happening in real time. As we speak, Mozambique has not recovered since March. Zimbabwe got some loans or some gifts or some contribution from the US. And even with that, Zimbabwe already has its own issues with the economy and everything. So climate change only made matters worse. Malawi is just so bad. Now, these three countries are one of the poorest countries, even in African context. Yes. In the world, they are also in the top 5 poorest nations in the world. So the point is, climate change has more dangerous effects on countries that don't have fully developed statehood or fully developed basic infrastructure, or countries tagged as poor. So it's important that we understand where the world is going, why the entire world is moving away from fossil fuel, again, one of the contributory factors of carbon dioxide. Somebody will ask me, how does fossil fuel contribute to carbon dioxide? Many do not know that fossil fuel is actually deposition of carbon dioxide in the ground for many years. It's assumed to be thousands of years. Carbon dioxide came together and pulled in some areas. So in pulling in some areas, it now formed what we call the oil. So the oil is a form of carbon. So that extraction, trying to get to this oil and bring it up to the surface, is also freeing carbon dioxide. It's almost as the same as cutting down trees and freeing carbon dioxide that have been trapped and sucked by either the branch, the trunk, the roots of the trees. Now, all this extraction to get this fossil fuel or the oil that we see, all releases carbon dioxide, methane, and many other things. These things are the things that come up to the atmosphere, mix with the elements, and create sickness. So, for instance, you have acid rain in areas where oil are actively explored. Example, Ogoni land in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta area. For every time you see oils being explored or being drilled or being released or being produced, there's an active flaring of gas. These gas are called methane. There is active release of carbon dioxide, and it's happening in Angola, it's happening in Ghana, it's happening anywhere oil exploration takes place. So that's why hundreds of nations across the world are saying that rather than continue in this way that has brought us all this extreme weather with respect to fossil fuel, why not we move to cleaner forms of energy? And there's a definition for cleaner forms of energy: energy that will not release emissions in a number that will affect the existence of human beings. So that's why there is a transition now to renewable energy. Renewable energy or cleaner energy are energies that you can get from primary source that will not affect the environment. Now, one of the primary source like sunlight. Africa has a lot of sunlight, and that's why I have to appreciate the government of Morocco. The government of Morocco are doing excellently well in ensuring that they transition from fuel to cleaner energy. Morocco now currently has one of the largest harvestation of solar energy, and they are also integrating it into their national grid system. It is projected that before the end of this mid-century, by 2050, a considerable percentage, about 60 to 75% of Morocco will be on solar. It means that the level of emissions that will come either from oil, from any other things, will reduce. And because we are transiting now to cleaner forms of energy, we are going to have innovative ideas being created. So I have gone through what climate change is. I've gone through how it affects us. It creates flooding for areas where you have rainfall. Your rain will be falling more than abnormal, and then too much of rainfall, if it covers the grassland, can even kill the plants. There's adequate amount of water that is required for plants to grow. Excess in that amount will kill off the plant. There will be too much water in the soil, and then the soil can no longer be able to take in necessary nutrients, or nutrients are leached away, or there's erosion, or there's complete pollution, or impurities are brought in by the flood, and then it destroys what we have there. So it's important that we realize in Africa that the world is evolving, that by 2040, less than 10 years or about 12 years, that some part of Europe will not have cars that are driven by fuel, because to be seen as you are part of the problem of the world. And where will all these vehicles later go to? So the sooner that Africa, and especially young ones like us that will feel the brunt, will be the working class people, will be the people within the working age group. The sooner we understand that the future is clean energy, renewable energy, and we tag along now that nations are beginning to restructure, the better for us. Hence why I'm appreciating the African Matters for developing this concept about us speaking to one another about climate change. Now, the next question is this impact on socio-economic, this impact on the environment, this impact on our health. Yes, let me also mention health. That the primary conclusion is that if we don't understand what climate change is, we're going to be in big trouble. The reason is because climate change has a way of affecting interconnected sectors that every one of us in the continent depend on. We depend on agriculture. So increase in temperature will cause drought. Drought means total absence or poor yield of agricultural stuff, total degradation of land such that vegetations do not exist. It can cause flooding. Flooding can destroy properties. In July 2017, a 10 hours or 11 hours rain in Lagos destroyed billions of dollars of property and killed lives. Till today, many parts of Lagos have still not recovered after a 2-year flooding. And that flooding is said to be one of the worst flooding in 500 years. So we are having floodings of massive proportion that used to happen 500, 1,000, happening in quick succession. That same week, that same flooding, that same flooding destroyed Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, a hill was split into two after another rain of 10 to 11 hours took place in the same West African region. And then till today, thousands of people are still missing from the rainfall that fell 2 years ago in Sierra Leone that created mudslide that killed 600 people on the spot and thousands of people missing. Now, the point is this: because it doesn't happen in your part of the climate, or because it doesn't happen in your district in Nigeria, your district in Gabon, your district in Libreville, it's still going to happen. It's just a matter of time. The problem is the consequences. Will they be that you will be able to say the story, or your loved ones will be able to say the story? This is why we need to take climate change very serious. And T54 Project, being a non-profit based organization established here in the US with branches in 169 countries, are doing everything to ensure that we address this. So what's the solution? The solution is looking and bringing everybody on board. So over the years, we have noticed that people think that they are powerless. There's nothing they can do because they are not scientists. They don't know the amount of molecular weight. They don't know 400 parts per million being the benchmark upon which any carbon dioxide emission greater than that will destroy life. But T54 Project is saying you do not need to know the amount of carbon dioxide or the molecular weight of oxygen or water. All you need to know is that climate change is going to affect agricultural practices. And by agricultural practices, it means that your food, your rice, your grain, tomatoes, cassava, carrots, potato, orange, bananas, all those things will be affected. When it affects agriculture, what does it mean? It means you may not be able to get the nutrients you need to grow and exist. Your kids are more worse off. Now, when that happens, what happens? When your kids do not eat well, they become malnourished. When you are malnourished, you cannot fight infection. You cannot fight anything. You are weak, right? When that happens, what happens? It leads to death. So climate change can alter agricultural patterns through altering of the weather variables that we have, creating increase in temperature, creating more desertification. All those things will cause trouble, will lead to poor yield. Poor yield will lead to inflation of the commodities that are available, because inflation is based on the need for people, but the reduction in supply. Reduction in supply will force people to sell at a higher price. Selling at a higher price will mean people will not have the financial muscle to buy the food they need to feed their children, feed themselves. That happening will lead to poverty. That happening will lead to loss of livelihood. That happening will lead to chaos and fights. That's always what Africa is known for. That will also spread diseases. Meningitis spread in the Western African belt. Meningitis spread has also been linked to rise in temperature. And all government officials know this. And it's so bad that every single cycle that starts from January to sometime around February and March, you always see that. So climate change is going to affect health. It's going to affect socio-economical parameters, like I said. It's going to also affect the insecurity problem that is causing the conflict. So what is the solution? Because that's where we're going to. How do we change this narrative as young people? The only way we can change the narrative as young people is if we start to think together, if we start to bring all our talents and our skills together. In T54 Project, why we have made wave in a very short period of time is because everybody that joins our organization is bringing something on board. So you are a musician, you can sing for climate change. There's nothing wrong if Davido sings in his song, you know, I love him, I love his song, but sings to raise awareness about climate change. Even if it doesn't affect his immediate area, but it affects all parts of Africa that love him. He's an African. There's nothing wrong if poets write poems about climate change. The problem is this, that there are people that will love the poem. They may not know what climate change is. They may not be able to understand the science, but they can read poem. Reading this poem that talks about the environment will be a way to spread the news. There are people in Africa. We have 200 million people that listen to music on a monthly basis. 200 million young people listen to it. And that number is more than enough to create change. All they need is an avenue to get educated and enlightened about the concept of climate change and how it affects their future. So imagine 200 young people, because Africa as a continent is going to be a young continent by 2050. It is being projected that the mean average age, that's the age of all people within the continent, the mean age, the average age will range between 18 to 24. It means that in the next 5 to 7 years, Africa will become much younger. In my country, Nigeria, with a population of over 200 million people and counting, 77.8% of the population are young people between the age of 0 and 35. So 35 is the benchmark, right? So what about 36, 37, 38? That was not captured. So if we do another statistic to see 36 to maybe about 40 or 50, which is relatively young, we will see a more growing stuff. So in Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, in the continent, we're already having a young generation. And that's why we see a lot of all the problems and the exodus of issues that we're seeing. So Africa will have agricultural sector affected, livestock will be affected, again because the vulnerability and the extreme nature of climate change will distort rainfall. In some area will create drought, in another area will now cause mass exodus of people. Transhuman migration from northern part of Nigeria to more southern parts has been creating conflicts that we now tag as the herdsmen conflict. Even though we know that there are also other narrative around it, but the core thing is when you move millions of people with herds at a short period of time to an area, the dynamics is chaos and anarchy. So while climate change will continue to have direct effects on health and its consequences, and we should also understand that in some areas, the diseases that we used to see for instance, like mosquito, will now leave some areas and go to areas that naturally do not experience those diseases. Other things we need to fear as Africa is the increase in zoonotic disease transmission. My background as a health personnel, zoonotic transmissions are diseases that animals carry and then infect humans, and then humans carry it as secondary reservoir and then infect others or infect other animals. Now, the threats to zoonotic diseases have risen because the melting of the ice that have trapped all these flus and viruses of billions and thousands of years ago are freeing them up. As birds now migrate to the North Pole to relax and return back, some birds, some animals like bats and all those things carry all these diseases, and then we are beginning to see re-emergence of diseases. Some people have even projected that climate change may also be worsening the Ebola spread, because we know that the Ebola spread, being a hemorrhagic spectrum, it has a source, bush meat, animals from bush, especially in the Congo area and in the central part of the area, because human beings are finding it difficult to get food, and forests have been cleared. These animals are coming more closer in proximity to human beings. Human beings that have no food see these animals coming in, end up eating them. Eating them now means that they're exposed to the disease that these animals ab initio carry as reservoir, and then after a few days you get infected, you transmit to other human beings who come in contact with you, and then there's an epidemic. So the rise in temperature has influenced a lot of things and will make things worse. It will make where people live become difficult. People will not be able to stay somewhere. That's habitability will become difficult. And we must continue to ensure that we raise this awareness and then provide solutions. So what are the solutions? The solutions are this: that Africans need to come up with a robust way of addressing climate change. And the two available strategies that the United Nations and all the 55 African countries have signed is the approach that can be adaptation and mitigation. However, for Africa, we will need to use both. But because mitigation is quite expensive, it is easy to do, but the African governments always claim that it's expensive. I don't see it as expensive, but they claim it's expensive. But we have to be strong on adaptation and ensure as young people that we look for innovative ways to amplify or to put pressure on government to also add mitigation strategy. So adaptation strategy just means that there's nothing we can do about this current stuff. However, we don't want lives and property destroyed. I'll give you a good example of mitigation strategy that T54 Project have been able to profile. Some years ago, 2 years ago, in the southeastern part of the country where I came from, a very wealthy trader that I know trades in livestock, chicken. So he had thousands of chicken. He had taken loan from bank the year before that, and he was raising thousands of chicken. He was selling them. He was having a nice time. People were coming all over the place to buy chicken. Then he will sell it off. He will keep his capital. He will plow it back into the market. He will get another livestock. So he was selling thousands of chickens on monthly basis until a bizarre rain that took place in 2017. I told you about the rain. The rain fell only for a few hours. I think about 10 hours or half a day. And the entire livestock he had drowned. They were all killed. He almost killed himself because he needed to pay back loans to bank. He doesn't have any capital again. He couldn't sell dead chicken. He couldn't even see any of the chicken to sell because the flood water took them away. And in the bid of trying to commit suicide, somebody reached out to him and said, you have this townsman who is involved in climate change. Why not just ask him what to do? And he reached out to me. I told him there's need to adapt. That one of the ways, since government cannot build dams that can regulate water, governments are still struggling to provide water. They don't want to do infrastructures that can regulate and control and channel water sources. What you need to do is adapt first. Why will add pressure to government to do mitigation? That's stop oil exploration, think about renewable energy. That's mitigation strategy. But for the adaptation, I told him, why not rare ducks? He laughed at me. What do you mean ducks? I said, yes, duck, quack, 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 ducks. There is no history in the world that ducks have drowned before. Since we know that these floods will continue in increasing pattern, which it has, why not rear ducks? Ducks are good ways to create protein. Even though the world is moving away from animal-based feeding system to plant-based feeding system, most of African countries will still be meat-loving people. What we preach in Team 54 is moderation. You can't keep doing something over and over again that has caused trouble. We know now from research that meat-based process actually increases emission. However, with smarter ways of agricultural practice, with smarter ways of engaging organic farming, with more emphasis on plant-based dietary, we can regulate the activity. So the language is moderation. So we preach moderation in everything we do, which is natural. You can't keep doing something over and over again that has caused trouble for you and expect a different outcome. That's called insanity. So what we are doing is climate insanity, where we keep doing the same thing that has brought us here. Active exploration of oil, using generators that emit emissions, not transiting to renewable energy, not using solar, not activating the power of planting trees. As simple as planting trees, those things work because trees help again to sequestrate carbon dioxide. In the Philippines, where we had our first anniversary as Team 54 Project, the president of the country made it compulsory before you graduate from university, before you graduate from high school, before you turn 13, you must have planted trees. So for graduates, 10 trees must be planted. It's law. So they struggle to ensure that they plant trees in their locality, on campus. The point is this, because it has been enshrined in law, that way they've been addressing the issue of carbon dioxide emissions, creating revegetation, creating new forest lines that are creating better, warmer climate. And again, it happened because in 2015, the Philippines experienced what we call a tsunami. The worst of all extreme weather, where you have oceans surging greater than thousands of feet and leveling an entire nation. It happened in 2015. And I think it was called Typhoon Yolanda. But it killed thousands of people. Till today, over 6,000 of people are still missing. Nobody knows what has happened to them, whether the sea has taken them, whether everything has gone. So the point is this, that Africa is in the brunt of one of the worst ecological disasters. Not because we caused it. The contributory role that we have are little. But because industrialization, Western people have taken out the raw materials we have without plowing back, regenerating, planting trees, ensuring that we look for cleaner ways of using innovation. That's where we are today. That's why we are where we are today. And because of our ethnicity, our bias, xenophobic attacks on people, we not seeing the bigger picture. That's where we are. Until Africa becomes united and we come together and we remove this colonial mentality that we always have to depend on the Western world. Until African leaders come together and say, it's time we demand our rights. It's time that you repatriate. It's time that you pay back what you have done. Because most advanced civilizations were built on the backs of our ancestors. It's only fair that whoever comes to the table of equity must come with clean hands. We are not saying that we want to fight you. No. We are only saying that now that we are where we are, transfer all the information. Make it easier for our government to be able to integrate renewable energy technology. Make it easier for us to get loan access to renewable energy technology for us to do things. So one of the ways that we advocate in Team 54 is the all-inclusive concept, where everybody brings his skill, his talent, and his passion. Your passion is your ability to be able to identify that there's a problem affecting people, and your ability to try and address the problem by relating with those that are worse off and lifting them up and putting them through the path of addressing the issue. So climate change is our issue. We have identified that. We are reaching out to all our member states in Africa. We have representatives, country coordinators in every African country. And we have told them that these are templates, these are things you can do. Plant trees, reach out to people to raise awareness, start intercropping. You understand? Instead of planting just one type of crop, you need to start planting crop. Start organic farming. Everything we need to do, we need to de-emphasize on fertilizer, because all those things are chemicals that have made the soil, the African soil, less fertile and things like that. So agriculture now in the advanced world has nothing to do with soil. Agriculture now is more of the technique and how to use innovation and technology to address and meet your needs. So in moving forward, we need to be ecologically responsible. An ecologically responsible African is that African that sees the need to achieve sustainable development with respecting shared common resources, you understand, and driving to ensure that livelihood can be sustained to meet our demands. We know it's possible. We have the technology that can do it. We have the knowledge. We have human capacity and things like that. In 2018 and 2019, T54 Project started investing in technology. So we started looking for how can we use technology as a new innovative tool to address climate change, because it's part of our mandate. That T54 Project is a non-profit organization that raises awareness about the impact of climate change, that takes solutions using innovative ways. Innovative ways can be in the area of arts. We've done artwork that have gotten recognition in the Philippines. One of the art painting designed by one of our members from Switzerland, canvas art, is on our wall. It is currently hanging in the city of Katbaloga as a reminder to people why climate change needs to be serious for them. You can also use music. Many of our members are writing music. One of our leading members, Sid Rock, has been writing music on climate change, and his melody is wonderful. And we hope that in South Africa, when the World Youth Summit will be taking place in South Africa in September, we hope he will be able to present and come on board and sing some of the climate songs that he's doing. Climate change also is creating opportunity for people. People now can actually have livelihood. You know, people are writing poems. We have members that are writing poems. We now have members that are bringing their heads together to use technology to address climate change. One of those innovative ways of addressing climate change is using technology. We designed an app. It's called the Rep Climb. Well, two apps. We have the Rep Climb, we have the Space Climb. Now, the Rep Climb is a digital reporting system that will be able to alert farmers, able to allow tourists, able to allow any of the person that uses it on the phone about extreme weather patterns. When you are able to project, or when you're able to predict when a risk can either affect you, affect your property, destroy, like when you're able to predict how soon it can happen, you can remove the property, or you can get out of harm's way, save your life, and live to fight another day. As long as there's life, there's hope. So so T54 Project and our team, the team include myself, Melitza, Izioma, Winnie in Uganda, Melitza in Serbia, Izioma in Nigeria, and myself, and some other team members from Indonesia, Eddie, Richard, and Peter. Now, the 9 of us started working on how technology can address the SDG goals, especially on climate action. And the 3 of us were able to design Rep Climb. Rep Climb got recognition in Sweden this year on Earth Day, and is currently the leading climate idea on the We Don't Have Time app system. And we are reaching out to every African listening to me. Go to, on this wall, we're going to paste the link to the wall, Rep Climb. Go and know what Rep Climb can do, how Rep Climb can help farmers plant early, help farmers understand the types of plants to plant, help tourists visiting areas that are prone to extreme weather and know when to plant, help you report in real time to your government officials what is happening with respect to climate change, with respect to flooding, with respect to farming. So the Rep Climb helps young people like me and you be able to report and hold our government accountable, be able to report to save lives. And that's why the idea is one of the top leading climate innovative ideas on the We Don't Have Time, a Swedish-based platform organization. Now, that organization was so happy about the idea that they took that idea to Google and said, Google, you have to sponsor an idea like this that is able to help farmers, able to help individuals become better ecological adults, be able to report in real time, and be able to help in disaster risk management protocols, which are part of the adaptive features we need to learn. And most African countries do not have it. So, but if people are able to know in advance of time of 1 week, 1 month about what will happen, they're able to uproot themselves from the path of destruction, and then government better will be able to prioritize on what next to do. So this was what was lacking in Malawi and Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And that's why when this low-grade cyclone struck, it created devastation. Until tomorrow, recovery process are still on the way. Another app we were able to design that then now won award 3 weeks ago was the Space Climb. Now the Space Climb uses a different operating system. It makes use of the satellite-based idea. So T54 Project and its team of Melissa, Izioma, and myself said the success of Red Climb is good. What if we can upgrade and expand? And the only expansion we could see is satellite-based information. So satellite-based information are more sensitive and can give you real-time reporting system. So why not we direct all the data, all the geospatial information, all the GIS information from the satellite base, convert them into a supercomputer, and then the supercomputer transmits all this information that are better sensitive than the digital land-based communication we have, transfer it to digital communication on ground, either on phone, to report. And then we applied our idea in a competition organized by the United Nations Office of Space Affairs. And on the 20th of June, T54 Project won the UN Office of Space Affairs Youth for SDG Challenge. And we will be going to Washington, D.C. in October, to pitch our ideas with investors and things like that. So these are one of the ways that we are using to address climate change, using ideas of technology, using innovative concepts, driving your passion and your skill to climate change, looking for common factors that can resonate with us addressing the issue of climate change. Now, when we try to do that, what we are doing is that we are preserving ourselves and we are inspiring others to look for other wonderful ways to address the issue. I would like to conclude by telling us, in summary, that if we do not act when your house is on fire, like Greta has said, the price to pay will be much more worse when the entire house has been burnt to the ground. You can save the first floor of a 3-story building. You can save the first floor by using the fire extinguisher. Climate change requires an extinguisher. It is a fiery scenario. It requires an extinguisher. And the extinguisher to use, which is just figuratively, is taking action, planting trees, conserving water, ensuring that your governments are held accountable, that people you elect understand that there is need for them to provide carbon tax. There's need for them to change agricultural practices. There's need for them to encourage permaculture. There's need for them to encourage regenerative agricultural things. There's need for them to encourage planting session. There's need for them to hold corporate entities that are discriminately rechanging and destroying natural ecospace. Human beings are the cause of where we are today. Only human beings can solve the solution. Rather than we blame the gods for our sins, or rather than we blame our sins as being climate change, rather than we politicize, in T54 Project, we don't believe in any political system. The only system we know is the desire and the aspiration of the people. What the people want and how the people intend to preserve their culture and their identity is sacrosanct to us. We respect people's culture, we respect people's belief. There's need for us to work together if we are to continue to remain as humans. I always tell my management team and some of our country coordinators, about 156 of them, that we are no longer humans. And this is general, whether African or non-African. But Africa's own is quite a bit more serious and is deeply concerning. We are not acting as Africans. We are not acting as human beings in the world. Because we're not following the definition of who a human being is. So I want to define who an African is, because this is an African audience. I'm aware that many non-Africans are watching, and climate change affects everybody. But these are to the most vulnerable and to those that are not seeing climate change as a threat to their own existence. An African is that human being who is able to express humanity. In expressing humanity, he is able to relate with the challenges and the ups and downs that people face. Even if he directly does not feel it, he's able to relate with them, join them in that situation, and try and lift them from the identifiable problem and put them through the path of solution. It's not as if he solves all the problem, but he places them through the path of solution. Some people, all they need is just for you to tell them thank you. All they need is for them to tell them, oh, it's going to get better. All they need is for you to speak up on their behalf. And we quickly forget that other livestock exist too. And if all of them become extinct, we will be the next. Another explanation I tell people are this. Thousands of years ago, dinosaurs used to be the largest monsters and the largest beast on earth. Nothing was bigger than them. The elephant was almost like an ant before a full-grown T-Rex. But what happened is this: the dinosaurs felt that their big muscles and their big head and their big brain will be able to carry them through generation. And as weather started changing, they refused to adapt. Human beings adapt, left areas that had volcano and moved away to areas that did not have volcano. Human beings adapt. They started making fire. They started building shelters. They started building barriers to prevent them from being exposed either to rain, to sun, and all those things. Dinosaurs did not learn. And today they are extinct, right? Now, the truth of the matter is that there's a new animal on the top of the food chain. And that animal is humans. So when all the dinosaurs are gone since 5,000 years ago, and climate change is threatening and making it worse than what we have ever expected, who do you think will be the next in extinction? It's going to be humans. So that's the more reason why Africa, that will be worse hit. Africa by 2050, from the computer projection we have in the IPCC report. The IPCC report are the organization saddled with the responsibility of explaining the impact and the aftermath of climate change. They are saying that by 2050, 70% of African land will be uninhabitable. Nobody will be able to live there. So what will happen? We're going to see a massive exodus of people. It will be child's play compared to what people are saying. People are flying into the Mediterranean Sea. It will be much more worse. Conflicts will now be more spread, will be more protracted. It will be a war without end. Rather than we get to the point of 2050 or 2100, as it is being projected, we have the power to change it. And the only way we can change it is if me and you sit down as young Africans. We rewrite the history of our fathers. Our fathers have played their role in history. It's time for young Africans like me and you to begin to create a better life for our children. It's unfair for me to put my daughter Kendall and Kamsi, my son, for me to hand over to them a battered nation, a battered country. It's not fair. It's not a good responsibility for me as an adult. So we have that mandate as young Africans. We have that mandate as young adults. We have that mandate, whether old, whether young, whether 10 years old, teenager, 50, 100. We have that mandate right now. We have the period right now to make things better. And the only way to do that is if we return back to expressing humanity. We return back being Africans, being our brother's keeper, ensuring that we start to de-emphasize on property, starts to increase communalism, living as a community, community gardening, community farming. Those things have to come back. Emphasis on materialism we need to reduce. We need to return back to teaching our children how to respect our culture, how to preserve our culture. No matter how you call yourself, no matter how you live in a foreign land, you must always understand that the white man respects his culture. The white man tries to influence your culture, what we call westernization or acculturization. They try to change and modify what you believe in. But what has kept us as Africa is for us being true to ourselves. That's not to say that we should keep all our ways. No, whatever ways do not help advance our existence as humans, as Africans, we'll do away with. The ways that will ensure that we meet up with the Sustainable Development Goals that have been signed by all the countries in 2015, and we create a better future for our young ones and what we want to do. Addressing climate change as an African, as a young man, is important. Next week, I and thousands of people all over the world will be attending the UN High-Level Political Forum meeting. We want you to send messages to us what you think we can discuss. Part of what will be discussed are some of the Sustainable Development Goals, namely climate change, renewable energy, sanitation, agriculture, education, poverty, and many other SDGs. But these are SDGs that will be priority area. We want every single person to work with other wonderful organizations raising awareness about the impact of climate change, like Climate Reality Project. We have a Climate Reality Project Africa. We have a 350, the 350 organization Africa chapter. We have T54 Project that is in every African country. Go to our website, Team54Project, oneword.org. You'll see all what we are doing. We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Now, one of the ways we can help Africa is through the operational functionality of RepClimb. Like I said, we want you to go and click on RepClimb. Click on RepClimb and click I agree. I agree that there has to be a way that Africans can be able to have a pre-knowledge so that we can adapt better to extreme weathers that are occurring frequently. You clicking on this will be able to allow Google and our partners, we don't have time, be able to make the app functional. Once the app becomes functional, it will be downloaded free for every African. As long as you're on the African soil, it will be free for you. That will be our own gift. But any other nation across the world will need to pay just a little to have the app on their system. The point is this: arming our people with information about the environment will be critical for us to achieve sustainable development in agriculture, in health, and vice versa. And the only way we can change, the only way we can get better, the only way Africa can meet its target for 2063 is if we achieve sustainable development goals and if we work together to preserve our culture and to preserve what we stand for. I want to thank you, Farai, for giving me this opportunity to be able to reach out to our audience and our members that I can see from all over the world. I want to thank our board chairman, Mr. Matthew Bonstata, for giving us this opportunity. Reginald Chukwu has posted a RepClimb link. So go to campaigns.wedon'thavetime.org/the-RepClimb-app. The link is there. Click on it, share to your friends. You will see, do you agree with this wonderful idea? Click I agree, and each of these clicks will be sent in real time to Google. And when we're able to get 100,000 votes, and we can't have 100,000 votes because on this platform we have over 20,000 people. If each of us gets 20 of our friends to click I agree between now and December. That app will be functional, designed by Google, because Google have the capacity to create a supercomputer that can help us expand and upgrade on RepClimb and other app systems. So please continue to watch Africa Matters, because Africa Matters are creating this platform for young people to get creative, to know what is happening across the world. And I must appreciate Farai. Farai is a wonderful lady, and she has inspired me and a lot of our members. And whatever she stands for is what we stand for. We stand for an Africa, a young Africa, or a youthful Africa that is able to meet the sustainable development goals for all category of people, irrespective of the age. So for us as young people, it's time that we rewrite history. It's time we correct the mistakes of your father and my father. And the only way we can do it is if we live better. If we try to be better versions of ourselves. If we try to be conservative, to be moderate. If we try as much as possible to look at all the global challenges, either in the SDGs or in the non-SDG areas, and see how we can create a process of addressing them. In addressing our problem the African way, we will make Africa great again. Thank you so much for having me, and God bless you. From my country people, Ndewo. From my country people in the Yoruba, Odabo. From the Hausa region, Nagode. And then from myself as an Englishman, or a man speaking in English, bye-bye. I also want to thank all our friends in South Africa. I also want to commend the South African government on winning the new election, the ANC, and to also tell the party ANC that there is need for us to develop South Africa. There is need for us to build oneness again. There is no place for division. Boundaries are all the things our colonial masters gave to us to constantly divide us. We have similar beliefs and similar vision. Every African wants what's best for their children. Every African wants what's best to uphold their culture. There's no African that does not want that. So there's no need for the division. In 2010, I was in South Africa, and I stayed in South Africa for a long period of time. And I stayed in a place called Florida in Johannesburg. Many people may not know that Florida in Johannesburg has a diverse group of people. We have lots of white people, lots of Indians, and lots of African. Every single one lived together. So Florida in Johannesburg is a wonderful place, that shows that we can coexist. So the Africans that come to look for a better life in South Africa are not your enemy. The enemies are those that ensure that the wealth and prosperity that's supposed to be meant for the South Africans are being shared by few people. It is the responsibility of governments across the world, irrespective, to provide for the vision, sustainable vision, protect lives and property of its citizens, create the direction in which citizens will go by. It is the failure and the complete disregard of all these natural tenets that creates conflicts, creates imaginary enemies, and creates the xenophobic-like sentiments. So please let us work together to ensure that we make Africa better. It's time that Nigeria, South Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, Morocco, Egypt, Djibouti, Eritrea, South Sudan, Cameroon, Angola, Malawi, Mozambique, Central Africa Republic, Benin Republic, Togo, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Gabon. We're currently in Gabon. T54 Project is in Gabon. We are helping out orphanage people, and we are doing that as a way of helping and then telling them what needs to be done. T54 Project is in the process of also doing fundraising to kickstart its eco-agro entrepreneurship program. We have found out that all African countries have to do with agriculture, have one thing to do with agriculture. So Using agriculture as a template to address climate change will be a wonderful way. We've applied for grants and we are going to be doing fundraising very soon. There are many other questions that are here. I hope I've been able to address as many as possible. What is key is that we work together. Only when we are united will we be able to solve our problems and confront those that try to create a narrative different from us. Like many of the literature minds that we know have said, it's time that we have our own narrative. It's time that the world see Africa from the African point of view. And this is my philosophy. And this is why everywhere I go to, I tell them that I'm speaking from the mindset of an African, from the concept of an African that is informed. I have read all your informations. I've read all the things you need to read, but this is my perspective about this global problem from the mindset of an African. So it's time that young people rise up again and truthfully ensure that the memories and the sacrifice of our heroes, of African heroes and our ancestors never goes to waste. We cannot afford to kill ourselves and allow the environment and allow weather get rid of whoever is left. It is time we do away with violence. It's time we do away with killing ourselves. It's time we sit down together and look for a common factor. And one of the ways to look for a common factor is for us to express the best versions of ourselves. No matter the provocation, no matter what anybody says, it's time that Africa becomes green again. It's time that Africa becomes great again. Thank you so much, and bye.